It's the crunch match, and it's probably going to come down to the outcome of which will be qualification. Top 16, they're just coming in now. I don't think it gets much tougher. Using the results, potentially them using their recent results as fuel for the fire they've lost in the last throws of the game, last three weeks. They're back at Ravenhill, Kingspan, whatever you want to call it, but Ravenhill, going by the old name. And we played some of our best rugby when we last played them, so we understand, giving them the same respect that we'd give ourselves, that they'll be royally up for this weekend.
I mean, that was a hell of a performance they put in at a place where there was a 76th consecutive sellout crowd at La Rochelle. It was to go there and do what they did. It was tremendous.
I think they deserved it, honestly, watching the game. I think everyone felt they deserved it. They probably did as well. And getting so close as they have been in recent weeks, I guess the rhetoric is that at some point your luck's going to turn. You know, it's our job to make sure that they don't have the luck of the Irish this weekend.
Has the elevation of Ben, hooray, he's in the England squad, has that gone down really well with the boys? Yeah,
with Ben most of all. But yeah, with the lads, there was a round of applause yesterday for him, as there was for everyone. Like, we celebrate it in this place because a win for them is a win for us all in that respect. With the four of them getting in, gave us a real good big boost in training that we needed just before the start of the team meeting yesterday. And well deserved. Like, we've been talking about him for weeks, and he's been asked about almost post every game because of his performances. So, we're dead chuffed for him.
And his brother, where are we at the moment for Tom?
I think still Wales, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. He should be back for that game, whether or not Borths wants him to get some game time with us. I think we might have Northampton before the Welsh game. That's up to Borths, whether he feels he needs some game time. But he wouldn't have played for 6 to 7 weeks going into that Wales game. Northampton's in the fallow week. So it makes a bit of sense, but you know, it's entirely down to Borths and Tom whether they feel that he needs it.
And we have to ask you every week we do about George. How close?
He was in a units session today and looking very sharp. So close but no cigar.
But I'll take it, an away trip to Ulster may not be the best way to introduce him if he was available.
No, he's not ready yet. He hasn't done a full week. He hasn't gone. You know, we're pushing past peak game intensity on Tuesdays on our second training day here, and he wasn't involved in that session, but he was running at full pace, getting a bit of bump. Backs and backs. So he looked really sharp. So it's just about his robustness now. He's able to run at that speed. It's can he do it for an extended period of time.
And was Rafi spoken to by Steve? Has he passed that on to you about his situation? Yeah,
they've all been spoken to. The communication's been really clear as to where they sit in not just pecking order, but in terms of his tracking of them over the next few games. And obviously him and George are two people who are being tracked.
Excellent. Cheers. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, Chris.
Afternoon, Alex. To kind of piggyback off that, if I take Rafi and then George separately, has Steve spoken to you directly about Rafi, or is it a conversation that he has had with Rafi?
It's a conversation he's had with Rafi. I haven't spoken to Steve as yet.
So he hasn't given you an indication as to whether the reason why he hasn't been included in the squad is to do with the fact that he's been injured and to give him a few more games with Sale and then he'll be back in, or whether it's just he's picked other players instead of him?
I wouldn't know because I haven't had the communication. He's only played 30 minutes and by his own admission, not to his standards. So I think he himself needs to prove to himself that he's back on form. I don't think he'd be super confident going into England camp as it was right now. That's just from our experience and my conversations with Rafi. He's being watched, and I'm sure he'll find form over the next couple of games, and then it's down to Steve. But at the moment, he's picking guys on form.
In the last 24 hours, have you had to kind of have a kind of side conversation with Rafi just to kind of see how he's feeling? Because obviously, even though, as you said, he's just come back from injury, so you have to temper expectation. Having been out for 2 months, he'd obviously been gutted to not make it. Have you had a little conversation with it?
Yeah, I did first thing Monday morning. He was the first person that I caught about 8:30 just to see how he was getting on and some reflections from the game. By that time, he'd already sat down with George Ford and been through his game, which I think is brilliant, isn't it? So he had all the answers. He is more level-headed, mature in his reaction to the conversation I had with Borths, in his non-selection for the training squad, in his reflections from his performance than I've ever seen him. Like players get stretched, don't they? They get stressed, they get stretched, they have time off, they grow, from my understanding. And when coming back into it, they're generally better for it, generally. The good players are, anyway. He's been better for this time off. I feel like he's got a wider perspective of the bigger picture as opposed to just wanting it all, wanting it now kind of philosophy is not about that, Rafi. I've been really impressed with him.
In regards, George, is the plan still, in theory, so long as the next sort of week or so go well, that Bath could be the game he comes back? And has there been any indication from England about kind of a certain number of games that they want to see George with Sale before he gets reintroduced back into England squad? Is that conversation not taking place yet?
It's not taking place, Kieran. It is. I've written it down in my little book to speak to Borths. I just haven't got around to it. So yeah, I need to speak to him. When I do, I'll let you know. You know, I'll let you know, but I don't think he's going to tell me, honestly. I think he generally keeps his cards close to his chest and he operates well in that way. So I am but a pawn in Borth's chessboard.
Is Bath at home next Friday a potential, or is that kind of still up for debate?
It's still up for debate. It's an outside chance. He'll have to get through a week, and a good week, to get all his metrics and loadings to a place where we think he's going to be robust enough. I'd love him. I'd love him to. I'm just taking guidance from physios here. You know, physios and doctors and medical team have been tracking him for 6 months. If it's down to me, if it's down to George, he'd be playing this weekend. But we have to put faith in the expertise of the guys who know what they're talking about.
Weekly injury update question: how are Simon McIntyre and Nick showing it?
Yeah, they haven't been. It was a big knock on the head, wasn't it? Nick cut an artery. I didn't know there was ones in your brain, or at least in your skull. He cut an artery, so his head was pumping. He had to get internally stitched and stitched on the outside to stop him bleeding. So he was a bit sore the day after because of the flesh wound, whereas Simac took it on the eye and he felt fine. So they've got a 12-day layoff because they've had concussions before, and I think that's right. They should be fine in terms of their return to play next week. And if they're not, they're not. You know, it's player first. But they are recovering. They are reporting well.
Were there any other injuries to come from Saturday?
No, just some bumps, and bruises, but no injuries.
In terms of returning players, is Tom Roebuck fit to go this week? And also, I think I asked, where's Kearney, the kind of trend that we got going?
Cooney.
Is Kearney isn't quite back yet from injury yet?
He's not quite back. Like he's done live scrums, full scrums today, and he's got, like with all tight heads, it takes a bit of time to get the feel back for that ton of pressure coming through your neck. But it was good to see him out there doing live scrums. He'll be back up for selection next week. Tom Roebuck is up for selection.
Good. Moving on to the news that came out, I think, Thursday last week about Mike Forshaw. Can you talk us through when you were made aware of Wales moving 4 Mike, in terms of the process before the announcement? How long were you aware of that?
The process for going for him, we were training last week, Monday. It happened all. These things happen quickly, don't they? So all the conversations between our CEO, Sid Sutton, and I think it's Phillips, is it? The Welsh CEO? Yeah. That they all happened on Monday, and kind of by Tuesday lunchtime, it was agreed in principle. So 24 hours.
Was presumably, based on the release, it is a permanent departure after this week. Was there any discussion around, a bit like with what Nick Evans has done with England, with Mike coming back for the rest of the season after the Six Nations, or was it just agreed that from next week it was just sensible just kind of to part permanently?
There wasn't any discussions about him coming back, and this is for what Mike wanted, for the opportunity, and what Wales wanted him for, which was, full time through a World Cup and a couple of years after. He's getting almost elderly, Mike Forshaw, even though you wouldn't know it, because of his life routine. He manages to stave off the ravages of old age, but this would probably be his last opportunity for a World Cup cycle. If he was to wait another 4 years in, I don't know if he'd have it in him. It's a massive loss as a mate, as a coach, and I've said all this. This has all been out, but in terms of opportunity for him, it's one that he couldn't look past. He had to take it.
You may not be able to divulge. Presumably, there was compensation involved in the fact that obviously he was under a contract and it's happened mid-season. You may not be able to say specifically what, but presumably was there significant compensation for losing a coach midway through the season?
I don't think there's any amount of money which would quantify the worth of Mike Forshaw, but the big boys sorted out the bunts.
In terms of replacing him, obviously it may be a different answer for the rest of this season in the short term compared to obviously from next season, but in the long term, i.e. kind of from next season, is the plan to appoint someone externally, or is there going to be an internal appointment, or is that kind of something that you will figure out further down the line, and in the short term it will just be internally sorted?
My hope and my belief is that it's best done by recruiting from within. That's my experience that I've had, particularly in an area which isn't broke. We have decent principles, and the players drive the standards and the systems that we have here. So to get someone else in could jeopardise all of those things that have been put in place over the last 10 years with Mike's tenure. So I think it's better that we recruit, train, and develop from within. In all aspects, forever. Honestly, I understand that there's a market out there for coaches, but if things are going well, then keep it in house. That's my philosophy generally, as you can see with the team as well as the coaches. Recruit from within, promote from within. Thanks, Kieran.
Can I jump in with one, Alex? Really enjoyed use of the bunts.
Nice little earner.
I think you've been speaking about this quite a lot over the last couple of weeks, so apologies. But what Ben's been through, as far as Tom getting the recognition, just impossible to imagine for anybody who's not a twin, who's got a brother who's going through. I mean, just such a rare situation. How has he dealt with all of that?
In his stride, actually. We've been developing his leadership skills, as you know, for years, and part of it is how you respond to events, whether it be positive or negative. That's been a massive focus for us. I've harp on, as I have since the start of this season. So it's just another opportunity for him to be able to manage and be in control of his own responses after a really brilliant turn of events for him. But as you know, with the Currys, they have an ability to have a singular focus, which borders on obsessive compulsive. And we've got a job to do this weekend. In fact, I tasked him with that job, as well as the other internationals, to play this weekend and not be thinking about next as they go into camp. That was the first meeting, the first leaders week we had at 10 o'clock on Monday morning, yesterday morning. So with that, he's taken it on board, being our captain again, to lead by example in that manner. The true test will be Saturday, 8 o'clock, won't it? I was taking it on.
Potentially a bit of a deep one, but is there a problem? Is there an issue as far as him not defining himself as someone that hasn't got the caps that Tom has, and being content that he hasn't? How has that manifested itself? Again, his own contentment. You'd have to ask him. It doesn't materialise through his actions or through what he says. Whilst Tom's away from camp, in camp, or has been away in camp, it does affect him because he hasn't got his best mate around or his twin brother to lean on. That's the biggest effect that I've seen. He's deep dived into process and how he can be a better player and a better leader here. And I think that's what you have to do, from my experience anyway, when you're not getting what you want or what you think you deserve, is just get better. And he's done that really well. Like, there's been no kicking stones and no sulking. Certainly no bitterness, because it's his twin brother around this place whenever he's been in camp. But on the flip side of that, you've never seen a happier man than the man that we had here at 10:30. He couldn't take the smile off his face. Rightly deserved. Like, good to see. Where is he? You'll know someone like, for instance, Ben Earl really well. Where is Ben Curry in the? Where do you view him in that shake-up of back rows that Steve's picked?
This is bad, isn't it? I only know the guys that he's picked from us.
Okay. So you've got where is he in the back rows across the country? Would you back him? Would you back him to start 7 in a Test match tomorrow?
Yeah.
You would.
I would, and I'm biased, and I think rightly so. I've been backing him after every game. When people asking me would he be in consideration? Yes. Why hasn't he been picked? Don't know. What could he do differently? Change his name? You know what I mean? Like, it has baffled me, but at that level, it does come down to subjectivity. It comes down to who fits best for the game plan, maybe who's best in terms of personality fits they can work with. The margins for why you get selected or not selected are so fine, and that's the biggest take on and acceptance the players have to have, that on any given day they probably are better than the person that's playing in the white shirt. But it doesn't come down to performance, so to speak. It comes down to someone's opinion. Once they understand that, then they can get on with their life.
Is there a reason Tom goes to 6 rather than him? Could he do it?
Yeah, of course he could. Easily.
Is there a reason Tom does it?
As I said, like, historically, Ben's just been a little bit better in the wider channels. I think that they've almost merged into similar players. Tom is a little bit heavier and was a little bit more contact focused in the past, which lends itself to a 6, coming around the corner a little bit later. Playing more in and around the ball and around the breakdown, which frees Ben up for a wider role. So we just play him in those positions, probably from latent perception of the kind of players they are. But on your suggestion, I think it was your guys last week, I'll ask them if they want to play left and right next time we pick them together and see what they say.
Thanks.
Cheers, Charlie. Hey, Liam, you all right, mate?
Yeah, Alex, how are you? How are things?
I'm good, thanks, yeah.
Good, yeah, question just with regard to the overall Champions Cup itself. But I know things can change radically with the final round of games coming up. But currently, of the 8 teams to be knocked out, 4 of them are Premiership teams. You're in one of those positions to be knocked out. Is that a reflection on the Premiership versus top 14 versus URC? Is it just the way the draw is, and is it really just to look at the draw? Whereas with the likes of say having back to back with Toulouse, and it's not a fair reflection on the Premiership, so to speak. What do you make of that?
It's always a reflection on the Premiership, I guess, isn't it, in terms of results on a bigger stage. I found it a bit tougher, in terms of the level of depth and strength of squad we have and being able to back up week in, week out. You've seen that, haven't you, with some of the selections over the Christmas period and some of the results that have gone heavily in that way. People have prioritised the Premiership over Europe. We haven't, because I still believe that we have the squad, everyone being back, and if we just kept 15 men on the field and both our props, we were in with a decent shout of doing Toulouse. Although the scoreline at the end wouldn't suggest that, but we were well in it with the 60 minutes and all over them for the first 20 with 15 men. You can testify to that, Kieran. So you add, potentially a Rafi Quirk on form and a George Ford on form, Tom Curry back in that squad, and you have to back yourself against anyone there. So that can only talk from our experience. But we have found it more difficult this season with the strength of depth of squad that we've had due to the salary cap reduction.
Yeah, it's fantastic. The Premiership itself, it's fantastic entertainment week to week. It's spectacular TV, etc. Spectacular for the fans who belong to the game. The excitement levels are brilliant. But just with regards to just contesting on this wider thing, is it finance that just come down to? You see there today, Dave Ewers, he's quitting Exeter after that's where he made his spring. He's going to the URC. He's going to Ulster. Is from the dealings you're having there with contract negotiations and stuff like that? Is it difficult with regard to putting the Premiership ahead of these other tournaments now?
You have to look at it. Yeah, it is difficult, and it's obviously it's not the finance; it's the sustainability of the sport, isn't it? We either need support from union, government agencies, or whatever it might be that the French do get, or increase our crowd base and our revenues, which we've talked about before, multiple streams of revenues to be able to for this cap to come back up again. Let us not beat around the bush. There's a world recession going on. My brother works in the banking industry, so the people directly affected by this are philanthropist owners. So they're getting the squeeze as well. So I understand it from their point of view. So that's what affecting the finance. And I think your eyes aren't open to it if you think everything's rosy all the time. You have to do what you can to make the best out of what is a difficult situation right now. And I think a lot of the Premiership clubs are kind of buying into that. I still think it's a really worthwhile and brilliant competition for the exposure that it gives these lads on a bigger stage and getting to finals. You can't. There's no substitute for that experience, Liam. Having to go to a really partisan crowd like Ravenhill, like the Kingspan, I'm trying to describe it to the lads this week. I went there in a quarter final with Saracens, and there was a mob of supporters waiting for Chris Ashton to beat him up, and we should have let them have him, but we didn't. We looked after him, we snuck him out. But you don't get that, do you? You don't get that kind of partisan crowd so much in the Premiership. Maybe a little bit at Gloucester, and that they're used to. So I think all these kind of experience just make them grow as people, make them grow as players. So I think it's still really exciting for me, even though it makes my job a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, that was the day Jared Payne got red carded, wasn't it? And there was hullabaloo.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you remember that game? It was a belter of a game. He swan dived twice. Idiot. Should have just scored the tries humbly.
So the bottom line is, you're not expecting a Galway-type pre-season welcome when you arrive in Belfast on Friday night.
Oh no, quite the opposite. No, we burnt our bridges there with the performance we put in last time. I think we know what's coming. It's going to be a good old ding dong.
Okay, fair enough. You've been talking about your England contingent there, but Bevan Rod hasn't got to mention it. I'm just wondering, with regard to Bevan, like, he got his 2 caps in November 21. He still hasn't been capped since then, even though he's been involved in the squads. What sort of advice do you give to a young fella like that? He knows he's got the talent, he knows he's got the ability to push on, but it hasn't happened for him yet, just the way selection goes week to week with the test team. How do you keep him focused on the job in hand to care of business at Sale, and the caps will come with England in time? He will get back there again.
Yeah, there's a perseverance in the process again, isn't there? And continually trying to improve his game. And he's super skillful, multi-talented rugby player, Bev, and he's just good at rugby. So we've looked at some of his X factors around the field and tried to lean into them. And by that I mean some of his defensive mobility, his decision making, the jackal threat that he is, that a lot of loose heads can't give you, and making sure he improves that decision making and doesn't go for the big plays all the time. And he's all over it, Bev. So we've looked at that, and we've also looked at some of the pitches that he presents in the scrum, because he's dominant, but can he be consistently good pitches? The things that are going to hopefully get him the starting role or off the bench for England, the things that set him apart, we've focused on those and focused hard on him, and I think we've had some improvements on that. And so he's just bought, rather than get disillusioned by the fact he hasn't. Bev's really steely, very resilient around the selection. It's just been water for ducks back. He's come back here, he's got on with it, and played well for us. Maybe this will be his chance. This will be the time that he does get the nod in the Six Nations.
Is he the sort of guy who'll come back to you, pull you up in a corridor and have a chat about his status, so to speak? How do I get better? Is he that sort of a character?
He's better than that. We had a decent, honest conversation post the Quins game, because as you know, he wasn't selected to start against Toulouse, and that was on a couple of the behavioural things that we weren't improving on. So I had a chat with him on the Tuesday, and he came back at me in that meeting. And he came and saw me again yesterday and said, look, what you said affected me in this way. So he's someone who actually didn't take it on and say, right, that's his opinion, I'm doing my thing. He actually reflects on it and comes back to me and gives it back to me, which is ace. So he challenges me in that regard. He's very reflective, very intelligent, and unlike a lot of young lads, doesn't just jump when you say how high type thing. He comes back and he wants to know why and for what for. And why did he say this? And so I'm really enjoying working with him actually at the moment.
Okay, that's a good attitude to have. And just finally for me, you've gone on in the past about the way you tailored things with regard to Manu Tulagi and access with the England S&C people and all that sort of stuff. Has any of that changed? The fact there's been a changeover with the Borthwick management coming in and replacing the Jones, or has it just continued on the way it has been?
Yeah, continued on the way it has been. We're actually finding Manu in his most robust form, aren't we, this season? Even though we do manage his minutes on field, we took him off at the weekend, he's playing every week. So it's a really good sign that we're finding the sweet spot for him.
I think he's played as many games already for you than he did a whole of the last season. So I think he's really ahead just in terms of the appearances he's putting in with you guys. That must be great for the club, given he's such a marquee player, and I'm sure the fans love him there at the AG Bell,
Yeah, his last one in, after the games.
Yeah, I know. I see him every time he's on signing.
Yeah. He's just great, isn't he? He's just great for the club, brilliant for the lads, energy giver, all of that and above, and brilliant player. That's. It's funny how we list that quality as his last in terms of my priorities, but it is in terms of when you're talking about Manu.